Hey everybody, John here, your remote CPA, and today we're going to open a big, huge can of worms because we're going to talk about home build pricing. So this first started over on the Remote CPA blog, so if you haven't seen it, head over to the Remote CPA website and check out the blog. But it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and it's something that's never ending, and it's something that's never the same. Even when you think that you've figured out pricing, here comes a curveball. So some of the things that we need to know about pricing include the two most common methods of pricing, which are the fixed bid price or the cost plus price, and then all of the common pitfalls that impact both of them. So I'm sure you're aware the fixed bid price is basically you present one contract and you perform all of the fixed aspects of that job. And then typically the homeowner has a section for their allowances where they have a budget. You take them to wherever it is you take them, flooring and plumbing and electrical, and they make their selections for sinks and light fixtures and all that stuff. But for the most part, your takeoffs have to be 100% correct because things like framing and drywall and roofing are part of the fixed bid. And then if there are any changes because of inflation on those fixed items, you absorb the cost. So bankers oftentimes like these because it minimizes the risk to their client, the homeowner. But from your standpoint, you have to be pretty careful, especially since the pandemic, because obviously we've been hit with massive inflation. And now, in my view, I think a lot of these costs should be coming back down, but we see sticky prices. What are sticky prices? It means the suppliers don't want to give up that margin that they were enjoying due to the pandemic. So unfortunately, you have to build that in, and I guess maybe you take advantage of sticky prices on your own as well. And then the other method of pricing that we see commonly is cost plus. And this, so basically you negotiate a deal with the homeowner where the fee for your time and expertise is relatively fixed. Usually it is a fixed dollar amount, but I have seen a couple cases where it's a percentage of the overall cost. But be careful there because that means you might not really get paid until the very end of the job. But then the homeowner is responsible for all of those fixed costs. So no matter what drywall or framing or rough plumbing, all of those items, you just give the invoice to the client essentially, or you can pay your sub and then the client pays you. So there's some advantages to both. The downside of the cost plus is it's not as common for new home builds, and it is less likely to be favored by banks. But both are very valid. I see more fixed bid prices for new construction and cost plus agreements for renovations. But it can be either or. Just make sure you choose what's best for you and make sure that you are choosing something that's profitable and not easy to get screwed over, because I'm seeing that all too often. So let's talk about overall challenges that impact both pricing models. So the first one, which we already touched on, is the unpredictability of the prices. Inflation is starting to level off, but you never know when things could buck the trend upward. Who knows what could happen next? There could be geopolitical things that play into role, and all of a sudden we are having a hard time getting fuel oil that's needed to get lumber and all this stuff. So make sure you have a buffer that will cover this inflation. And also just know that even if we don't have supply chain issues, these costs are probably going up. And so if you quote a bid to a homeowner today and they don't sign for 3 months, you need to anticipate, hey, what is that inflation going to be over the next few months? Next largest challenge is clients not understanding that the contractor can't just absorb cost overages on fixed materials. There is no magic button that our general contractors have where, if lumber goes up, they can't just, hit a button and rewind back to the price that it was a month ago. And a lot of times the homeowners get confused that all of these costs mixed together. the cost of the materials and the cost of your time, expertise, and everything that you put into the project. You don't have control over these materials. Even if you make a mistake in your estimate, you really can't simply absorb what you did. I mean, there could be situations where you're legally obligated to because of a contract. But I guess you need to work with your lawyer to try to have a loophole. So if you make an egregious mistake in your estimate, you have some reprieve from that homeowner, because they should not be benefiting from you unconditionally. They should not be stealing your profitability. And a lot of times the homeowner doesn't understand that. They just, they see it as one big, huge price, and they want, an extra wall, and they tell you that you messed up on another aspect of the project. So in order to call it fair, they think that you should do some work for free, provide those materials. And it's a slippery slope. Once you provide a few materials for free, next they're going to ask for something more. So just don't provide any materials for free. And then another big challenge that we see is not accounting for overhead costs, or not properly accounting for overhead costs. I see this too often, where a home builder will quote a job and it has a nice 20% markup, or so they think, but they haven't allocated anything for their time, the overhead of the office, including the staff and all the office expenses, even down to utilities. And a lot of times the home builder won't even build anything into overhead for their own time, which is a whole nother huge issue, which is why I advocate home builders to be S Corps, because you need to put yourself on payroll and factor that into your overhead costs. And then in addition to what you're paying yourself on payroll, you need to earn a healthy profit to mitigate the risk that you took on for starting this whole business to begin with. And then two common things that are so often overlooked are warranty and rework. And these are two painful topics for home builders, because you want to believe that your project is going to be perfect and flawless and you're going to get it right the first time. But if you're doing any kind of custom work, that's almost never the case. So even you just have to build it in. And with homeowners, they don't realize the mistakes that you make are significantly less than the mistakes they would make if they were self-contracting, or it might even be significantly less than the mistakes made by one of your competitors if they were to build with one of them instead. So just do yourself a favor and build in a buffer for this rework and warranty work. And you might not even see these expenses for a year, 2, 3 down the road. So you might not even really be able to match up those costs with that specific job. And that's a problem, because you might finish a job and say, yay, I got this nice healthy profit margin, and then 2 years down the road, it comes back to bite you with some warranty expenses. And guess what? Your margin that you thought was so awesome 2 years ago, all of a sudden just got destroyed. So just do yourself a favor and price in the buffer for rework and warranty expenses. And then another challenge that I frequently see is just too low of a margin percentage goal overall. It used to be so common that a 10% markup would be fine. But now I'm pushing home builders to aim for more of a 20 to 25% markup. And it's subject to change again. And this depends on your market, where you're building, your client. And something that someone said to me one time, it really stuck with me, is you cannot make up for low prices with high volume. So this means that you can't, if you have low prices on all of your jobs, you can't just simply do 10, 20 more jobs at low prices to make up your margin overall. You need to have a solid margin on all of your jobs. I get it. Maybe the production builders have slightly different economics, but I think most of you are trying to go the ultra custom route. And so just make sure that you have a solid profit on all of your jobs, and don't get in a situation where you're just doing more jobs to try and earn a profit to pay for other jobs that weren't so profitable. And no matter how you calculate your fixed overhead expenses, revisit this calculation often and thoroughly. So, I would say quarterly at the bare minimum. Ideally, it would be every time you quote a new job because you might lose track of your fixed expenses if you hire a new person or if you do an office remodel. All of that those costs have to be borne by your customers. So don't lose sight of that. And then finally, if you finish a job and you feel resentful toward the homeowner, it means your price was too low. Matter of fact, if you walk away from that job and you hope that you never see that homeowner again, it means that you were not properly compensated for the stress and the time on your part. So look to the future. When you come across that prospective client who you know is going to be extra difficult, make sure you build in the time in your bid so that you can deal with that. A few things that have really helped us over the last year or so is making sure that every job is in Builder Trend so that all of the cost codes are used on all of the jobs, or at least considered on all of the jobs. So you have your list of all of your cost codes. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're making a ton of new cost codes for a specific job that you're bidding, you might need to ask yourself first, is this the right job for our company? Are we too far out of our specialty? And number two, it looks like this is going to be pretty irregular. Is the margin compensating for all of the extra time and energy? Because right off the get-go, you're having to spend time creating all of these extra cost codes. So you know your whole system is going to have to adapt to this for the rest of the job. So make sure your margin reflects that at the beginning. And even if a homeowner seems like they're uncomfortable or it seems like they're going to shop around before they're ready to sign, that's okay, because that tells you you're not leaving money on the table. If you walk into that meeting and they're just, decision made, there's no questions and they're ready to sign, that probably means there was a little bit more budget on the table that you could have won for the value that you bring. So overall, I'm tired of seeing too many home builders underprice their jobs. I want to help you all get started on the right foot. So if you'd like to have more of a discussion, don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to have this topic on the front end when you're bidding the jobs, as opposed to on the back end when you've already lost money and you're figuring out how to rectify your company. So thanks for watching and have a great week.